Are you tired of always losing your MVM games? Does your team just keep letting that one giant scout run by? Well, after this video, you'll be able to keep up with the pros. This isn't for any tour in particular, just general advice that transfers across all scenarios. Anyways, without further ado, here's a quick guide on how to not lose in MVM. First of all, the most important thing you can do is to always make sure you're keeping track of the bomb. Most of the time this isn't too hard to do, but sometimes you can get wrapped up in the fun of blowing up all the robots right as they spawn and completely miss a scout that just runs on by. That's why it's a good idea to try and check the position of the bomb every now and then. If you check often, you should be able to catch any stray robot who slipped through your defenses before they can plant the bomb. What's even better at making sure the bomb never escapes your sight is deliberately covering it as the engineer. If the bomb moves back, move your sentry back as well so that it's always right next to the bomb. That way, any more enemies that sneak past your defenses will get mowed down before they have a chance to grab the bomb. But what if the enemies never slip past you in the first place? It's impossible for them to sneak by if you straight up block their path off. As the heavy or really any class with a medic behind you, try standing in the path your enemies need to go. Most of them, especially the giant scouts, don't have enough brain power to figure out how to walk around you, and they'll just get stuck in place until you kill them. You can also do this with the engineer sentry, which works insanely well with the wrangler and some building health upgrades. Your sentry can have up to 1800 effective health, which is enough to sponge for basically however much damage you need. And if you're struggling to figure out what path the robots take, just look up at the giant blue arrows that tell you exactly that. The robots will always follow these, making them a super useful and informative tool, but a lot of people just completely ignore them, or they don't even realize what they're trying to tell you. Either way, if you forgot about these blue arrows, even just remembering to check them every now and then will help you out a ton. Another useful thing to remember, always remember that you're playing on a team. Sure, getting your damage number as high as it can go can be pretty satisfying, but you have a much better chance of actually winning if you recognize where your team needs you. Milk your enemies as the scout, maintain that dispenser as the engineer, and shield your team as the medic. Just whatever you can do. This isn't just for support class, every class needs to work together. If you're playing a class like heavy, you should recognize that even though you could get a higher damage number by attacking the uber medics, it's gonna hurt your team a lot more than it will help. Leave the medics to the classes who can deal with them more effectively. In a similar vein, you should try to protect your teammates as well. If you see a sniper scoping down on one of your teammates from across the map, kill it as soon as you can. Snipers are infuriating when you die to one, so if you can get rid of one, it'll help your team out a lot. Alright, on to specific things you can do as specific classes. There isn't much to say for Scout, all you have to do is just grab money and support your team, but one thing that is often overlooked is how effective Scout can be as a tank killer. By using either the Force of Nature or the Soda Popper combined with the increased clip size upgrade, it gives Scout an insanely quick reload, and using this in combination with firing speed upgrades and a crit canteen can do a pretty solid chunk of damage. I'd personally advise you to use the Soda Popper instead of the Force of Nature, because the jump ability is great for dodging the robots, and the Force of Nature's knockback is pretty annoying at times. While the Beggar's Bazooka is probably the best overall rocket launcher for MVM, the Airstrike can really give it a run for its money in the later rounds. With maximum clip size, the Airstrike can hold up to 16 rockets, and in combination with a crit canteen, these rockets can absolutely demolish a tank. It takes a lot of money to get to this point, yeah, but once you're there, it really pays off. What's even better is if you can get a medic with canteen specialist to give you the crit canteen while you use an ammo refill to pump out 32 crit rockets at the tank. You'll pretty much destroy it in one go. I would recommend especially playing this in wave 666 because you'll have enough credits to do it multiple times. Moving on, thanks to everybody in the comments last video who told me how to properly burn the tank as Pyro in MVM. Because of the weird way fire damage is calculated, it's actually better to stand right in front of the tank and look straight up at the top edge. The fire particles do less damage the further away from you they hit, and for some reason when you shoot directly into the tank, the particles don't register until near the end of its body, and that means your damage falls off more. By looking up at the edge, your flames will properly register their initial hit, and you'll deal much more damage. Now I have no idea why the developers decided to code it that way, but if it means we can deal more damage, I'm all for it. As for Demo Man, I don't really have any practical advice other than use the Scottish resistance and spam stickies, but one thing I will say is that playing Demo Knight in MVM is a strategy that I think is definitely overlooked. Yeah, it's probably less efficient than just sticky spamming, but it's a lot more fun, and it's also a lot more useful than it would seem. As long as you get the crits on kill upgrade, you can stand where the robots spawn and chain crits, and when done correctly, you can easily get the highest damage doing this. It's probably not the best, but I would personally recommend the Skull Cutter for doing this, because the damage bonus allows you to one-shot light classes with fewer damage upgrades, and you can still get random crits if you need to shred a tank or something. But anyways, it's a really fun strategy that you should give a try. Playing heavy in MVM can be difficult for new players because it's very different from playing heavy in casual. With damage resistances and upgraded healing, you have to worry a lot less about keeping yourself alive. You should always be standing right in front of where the robots need to go because it's your job to tank pretty much all the damage. With a good medic or a dispenser nearby, you'll be able to sponge a very respectable amount of damage, especially with resistance upgrades or a scout running milk. Also, a quick note, most people already know this, but the heavy actually has a massive damage penalty against tanks. It lowers his damage output to pretty much nothing, so as heavy you should probably leave the tanks for the other classes to deal with. I already went over how to use your sentry effectively as engineer, so here I'll mention one thing. Engineer is a support class, so your primary goal is to support the team. That means the most valuable upgrades for you to buy will be two-way teleporters and especially dispenser range. It's pretty often that I see new players going for upgrades like the disposable sentry, but that upgrade is probably about 20 times worse than dispenser range is. In short, just buy dispenser range first. It's really good. Another note, according to some people who are way smarter than me, the sentry firing speed upgrades are slightly bugged and they don't work properly all the time. I haven't tested this or anything, but it might be a good idea to keep that in mind when choosing upgrades. The first upgrade gives around a 30% firing speed bonus, but the second upgrade gives only 5%, which is why a lot of people suggest that you should only buy the first upgrade and ignore the second. A big tip for the medic is that your projectile shield isn't just for protection, it can also be used to shield bash your enemies. It actually does a reasonable amount of damage, so you can use it to defend against light melee classes like bat scouts. Also, I would recommend always buying the canteen specialist upgrade because the ability to instantly give your power classes crits or uber is just really strong. As the sniper, you should of course always buy explosive headshot. This upgrade single-handedly makes sniper one of, if not the best single class in all of MVM. As long as you can hit your headshots, which isn't that hard to do when you have 25 targets on your screen, the explosion from the headshot will do enough damage to kill everything in the area. You should also be using the Hitman's Heatmaker at all times because of the absolutely insane giant killing ability it has. In normal casual TF2, the Heatmaker's ability to stay zoomed in is absolutely useless, but in MVM, it means you can stay focused on headshotting a giant and hit headshot after headshot in a row. You'll rack up damage like no other class can and absolutely destroy the giant and everything around it. Lastly, we have the Spy. Unfortunately, the Spy is just kind of bad in MVM, but there's still a couple cool things you can do with him. My personal favorite strategy to use while playing Spy is to use lots of movement speed upgrades because it allows you to run in circles around the giants and repeatedly backstab them. If you can find the right way to do this, it's pretty powerful, but sometimes it can be hard to pull off. You should also be doing this while using the kunai because that way you get put up to 210 health after every stab. The only issue with this strategy is that it's just much easier and more effective to go sniper and shoot the giant, but if you really want a way to play Spy, there you go. And anyways, there you have it. Hopefully after hearing all these tactics, you'll lose slightly less in MVM, but I can't guarantee anything. A lot of these tips are pretty surface level, as this video is mostly for MVM beginners, so if you're a more experienced player who knows a lot more tricks, leave them in the comments, and I'll try to make a sequel to this with all your ideas. And while you're scrolling under the video to comment, consider subscribing.